Always a little risky when we just pull Gordon in from the hall and say, "Will you introduce me?" But so much confidence I have in Gordon. Gordon is Governor Cox's senior policy advisor, and as he works as a liaison on all of the federal issues. More importantly, he took my office. Now, I had a corner office. It was beautiful. It was one of those things that maybe I should stay for another 7 or 8 years just for the office. But I left it so that Gordon could inherit it. And he's done a much better job than I could. So I am super happy to be here. As Gordon said, my name's Tami Pyfer. I am Chief of Staff and VP External. I do external affairs for an organization called Unite. We've created a Dignity Index. It's our core project right now. And I've been traveling literally all over the country speaking to people about this project. And I've been at BYU 3 times, I think, Laura, speaking to members of the Office of Compliance and Integrity. And we've spoken to a student group here. So it feels really good to be back on campus. This is my oldest son. He's a musician. He has a studio here down by June Audio in Provo. And when I was in the governor's office, there was a group of young students who were learning how to be entrepreneurs. So they said, send us a picture and we'll do a portrait from your picture. And I love this picture of my son. And so I sent them this picture and they drew this portrait of my son, which I think is adorable, right? The blue beard and, his ukulele. It looks so cool. My son loved it so much that it's hanging in his studio. I loved it so much, I wanted them to do me. So I sent this picture of me and my husband. And $6 later, this is what I got. I was robbed. It's always interesting to see yourself through someone else's eyes, especially kids' eyes, right? And it's also a little uncomfortable when you see yourself the way someone else sees you and realize that it's dramatically different from how you see yourself. Today, there might be opportunities to see yourself a little differently than you think you are. And while it might be a little uncomfortable, it's also a really great opportunity for personal growth. Now that you've met my husband and my son, I want to introduce you to the rest of my kids. This picture is taken from a road trip we made to Montana, where I was raised and where my husband was born. This trip was taken in 2021. We probably could not have taken this trip earlier. In 2020, there was COVID. 2019, there was no COVID, but we didn't feel like traveling together. 2018-ish. And the reason wasn't because of COVID in the earlier years or that we didn't have time. It's just that we were struggling with some things, relationships in our family. And here's why. This is my oldest son. This isn't birth order. He's a Republican. My next, Karen, is an independent. Kimberly is a Democrat. My next is a Democratic Socialist. And this son is a Libertarian. This is why they had me at the Pluralism Conference. I got it all taken care of on my own. My husband is a conservative Republican, very conservative, and I'm moderate. I served 12 years in elected office in positions that were nonpartisan positions, and so I consider myself quite moderate. But as you can imagine, in 2017, 18, 19, when the political climate started to heat up, or I shouldn't say started, but got more intense, those conversations started to seep into even our family relationships and made it difficult to have a lot of conversations. I know our family isn't the only one that has struggled over the last few years with politics. This comes from some quite recent data that talks about where we're at in politics and in polarization. 4% of Americans, only 4% believe that our country is working well. I can't imagine any other period of time when it has been that low. More than 1 in 3 Americans say that they have cut off a relationship, a key relationship, due to politics, and nearly half of those are with family members. I venture to guess that everyone in this room knows someone or is someone that's been affected by this, that has a family member or knows of a family member that doesn't come to Thanksgiving dinner, or that you don't talk to, or that you'd prefer not to talk to because politics is going to come up. And then as a nation, we're split. 83% of the country says that we're more divided than at any other time in their lifetime. 23%, 1 in 4 Americans believes their state should secede from the Union. Imagine that, right? So we believe that the problem isn't just the differences that we have that are causing these drastic numbers, that are causing our polarization, but the problem is really contempt. And Arthur Brooks wrote a beautiful book, end of 2019, early 2020, called Love Your Enemies. And he said that we have this cultural addiction to contempt, and it's addiction fueled by the outrage industrial complex. He goes on to say that if we want to solve the polarization problem, we have got to solve the contempt problem. And as each of us know, I used to spend like 10 or 15 slides talking about this, how we got there. Is it really this bad? Where are we at? It's like, now it's like one slide, because we all know. We all know that contempt has become the language of political speech. And just as a preview, this is not all about politics. But since this is a situation we're all living in every day, it makes it easier for you to see where I'm going with this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about politics, but it is the language of political speech. And the rise of contempt has led to the rise of anti-Semitism and political violence. Amanda Ripley writes that political speech, we know from the research, can incite violence. She also talks about the power of political speech to reduce the likelihood of violence. We just don't hear those examples very much anymore. John Gottman, the renowned family therapist, says that contempt is poisonous and that it just leads to more conflict. This is your social media feeds. Maybe not yours, but generally our social media every day. So contempt is not just eroding our political discourse and our public trust, but it is damaging our family relationships. Again, from Arthur Brooks, contempt will wreck your relationships and harm your health. I've given that quote numerous times, but when I was recently reading some work by Dr. Gottman, again, he said that research shows that couples that are contemptuous are more likely to suffer from infectious illnesses. Yes. I will. Yep, I'll get right to that. He also said, Dr. Gottman said that contempt is the single greatest predictor of divorce. In Arthur Brooks' book, many of you have probably read, he tells about a story of Dr. Gottman says when couples come in for marriage counseling, he said there's a couple of red flags. One of them is the eye roll. If one of them rolls their eyes while the other one's speaking, he said that's a red flag, and chances are pretty low that couple is going to make it because it's a sign of contempt. He calls contempt one of the 4 horsemen of conflict in relationships. So we believe that the solution to contempt is dignity. And this comes from the work of Dr. Donna Hicks, who's an international conflict resolution specialist. She's worked in war-torn countries across the globe, in Northern Ireland with Bishop Tutu, in South Africa, in Asia, and South America. So imagine her sitting across the table from groups who are killing each other. They have high levels of violence. They hate each other. And she talks about the magic weapon, so to speak, of resolving those conflicts being dignity. She says, along with our survival instincts, the yearning to be treated with dignity is the single most powerful force motivating our behavior. She said, if you violate someone's dignity repeatedly, you'll get a war or a divorce or a revolution, because a desire for revenge is an instant response to what she calls a dignity violation. That's contempt in our language. So some definitions. What is dignity? Dignity is this mutual recognition. It's this desire to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be listened to. Think of people that you know, and this phrase has become popular over the last few years when people say, I see you. And you know that they do see you. You know that they understand you, that they listen. They are safe people. Think of a person in your circle that makes you feel that way. They're treating you with dignity. And on the flip side, think of someone who doesn't make you feel safe, who doesn't treat you that way. That's contempt. We define contempt. This is our shorthand definition. It's this feeling of disdain or disgust for another person. I see myself above you. Dr. Gottman also uses disdain and disgust, moral superiority. You're better than that other person. They look down on other people. People, when they're treating with contempt, see themselves as morally superior. I see myself above you. Dignity is the inherent worth we have from birth. In my faith tradition, and many of you share that tradition, we believe that we are all literally brothers and sisters. We're all children of God. My two colleagues are Catholic, and they share the same faith tradition as far as the inherent worth that we all have, that we are all children of a loving creator. So instead of saying, I see myself above you, I see myself in you. There's a piece of that humanity within you that I share. So Donna writes that if indignity or contempt tears us apart, dignity can put us back together. We studied this early on in our work in Unite in 2020, early 2021. We were developing what our tool would be. What is our role to play in healing the country's toxic political divides? And we came upon the work of Arthur and Donna Hicks and we thought it's easy. We need to combat contempt with dignity. But how do you do that? How do you promote dignity when you can't measure it? It's hard to maximize something that you don't measure, you can't measure. This is from Representative Emmanuel Cleaver, who's a sitting congressman now, and he said, we get scored and evaluated on everything we do. There's a scorecard that, the NRA sends one out for me, and the people, environmentalists will send one out on me, Planned Parenthood, we're scored on our tax, our vote on tax, or, the taxing record of the tax rates, or he said, you name it, everybody. No one talks to us. No one scores us on how we speak to each other. So it's easy to see that maybe is not very important. So we took that to heart while we were studying our role to play, and I watched that hearing with Emmanuel Cleaver. We had begun to build this instrument, call it a scale, and we've moved to index. It's the Dignity Index. Our tagline is ease division, prevent violence, and solve problems. I like to lean heavily into the problem-solving mode, because when you treat people with dignity and dignity comes into your conversations, that's when you start to solve problems. So the Dignity Index focuses on language that's spoken in moments of disagreement. It's not meant to score everything. It's meant to score what we do when we disagree, when we're afraid, when we've been hurt, when we're angry. And the scale runs from 1 to 8. The bottom 4 levels of the scale are the contempt side of the scale. The top 4 levels of the scale are the dignity side of the scale. I'm going to walk you through it quickly. Then I'm going to hand out some cards and we're going to practice. So a 4 is the first step into contempt. A 4 is when you're saying, we're really better than those people. They don't belong. They're not one of us. I'm going to keep my group over here. It's like this separation. 3 is not just, are we better than you, but we're the good people. You're the bad people. It's us versus them. Everything's a competition. I loved how our speaker this morning said, when we go to church, it shouldn't be a competition, right? But everything's a competition. Out of 3, it's us versus you. 2, those people are evil and they're going to destroy our country if we let them. It's not us versus them, it's us or them. I'm on a lot of mailing lists for campaign fundraising from both the left and the right. This is where almost every campaign flyer comes in. It's a 2. Some of them are a 3 on a good day. Once I got one from someone in California that I don't know because I'm on a list, and it was like a 5. It was on the dignity side, and I about fell over it. It's the only time it's happened in 4 years. One, then there's no other place to go. If they are evil and they're going to ruin our country, then we have to destroy them. We have to destroy them before they destroy us. This is where that language leads. And people will often push back, as they should, and say, well, I wouldn't do that. I mean, this is just to get your base, wound up. And we're talking about politics, but we're also talking about office politics. We're talking about having a conversation that you disagree with someone, and I'm going to whip up my friends so that I can have a stronger base to challenge you on. Well, when you say that they're going to ruin the country, there are people, you may not think of violence, but other people do. And they show up at Justice Kavanaugh's house with an explosive device, or Nancy Pelosi's house with a hammer, because they are doing their moral duty as a red-blooded American. These other people are destroying the country, and we hear that. They've heard that language all around them. Our words matter. They do matter, which is part of the reason that we feel so strongly about teaching people the language of dignity versus contempt. So let me move up to the happier side of the scale. 5 is your first step into dignity. And this is like the other side has a right to be here. They have a right to be heard. It's their country too. All's good. I'm not necessarily going to engage with you, but I also don't think that you don't belong. It's like you do your thing, I'll do my thing. 6 is when we always talk to the other side. I'm going to look for things we have in common. And I'm going to build on those things we have in common. This was a strategy that I adopted when I was first on the city council. It's like, let's find out what we agree on and let's make things better. Part of that was being a newbie, and I didn't want to talk about what we didn't agree on, right? But you can make a lot of progress by finding those things you have in common. 7 is when you're beyond now just looking at what you have in common. And you want to find those things you don't have in common. What do we disagree on? I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what brought you to that point. I want to hear your story because I may change my mind. A hallmark of a 7 is that you're able to admit that you were wrong or you change your mind. In a lot of situations, a lot of like a work culture or certainly a political culture, it is absolute political suicide to change your mind or to say you might be wrong, right? Because then your side turns against you. How dare you change your mind? Even in small town politics, right? On a city council, we would have public hearings. And a lot of times the people would come to the public hearing and the first thing they would say is, I know you already have your mind made up, but I'm going to say my piece anyway. Because that's how people feel, that you already have your mind made up. And if you visited ahead of time or you've talked with the city staff and you kind of think you know how it should be and you hear differently and you change your mind, that's a 7. It's very dangerous personally for people because you are making yourself vulnerable to people that you had maybe once sided with. That's why they're rare. It's rare. And then an 8 is the top of the scale. This is very aspirational. Everyone is born with inherent dignity, so we treat people with inherent worth, so we treat people with dignity no matter what. This is, I call it the Desmond Tutu level. Again, very aspirational, and yet all of us can find ourselves here and probably do find ourselves here. We find ourselves all over this scale from day to day, depending on the situation and the circumstance. So what does this look like? Here's some more on our definition of contempt. When we are treating people with contempt, we're mocking them. We call them names, we make sarcastic comments, we ridicule their backgrounds and their beliefs, or we define them on the basis of a single belief. You're a Democrat? Oh, I already know all about you, and you are XYZ, and none of it's positive. Or you're a Republican? Well, my Republican friend said this, and so you must be one of those. I'm really done talking to you. That's contempt. We lump everyone in together. And then we blame them for the bad outcomes. One of these, I'm sorry to pick on fundraising emails, but there's such easy material. One of them literally listed out bad things happening and blamed, I can't remember. I think they were blaming the Democrats for all the bad things. And then they listed the good things and they said, this is what our side is doing. And then they listed all the good things and they took credit for all the good things. It could not have been more explicit than that. again, John Gottman, when he talks about contempt as one of the four horsemen, he says that in relationships, we are ridiculing people, we're mimicking or using body language like eye rolling, scoffing. He said the target of contempt is to make people feel despised or worthless or certainly less than you. This is our short clips. The first second or two of these clips won't come through right away. But this is my colleague Tim Shriver talking about what do we do? How do we treat people with when we disagree with them?
You change people by introducing them to their own goodness. It's almost the opposite of what we instinctively do. If I disagree with you, my first set of responses is to attack you, argue against you, embarrass you, expose you, surround you with people that don't agree with you, organize a group against you. And it doesn't work. It doesn't change people.
Changed by someone calling you names, mocking you, organizing a group against you. It just doesn't work. And so he says at the beginning of the video that we missed is that you change people by introducing them to their best self, not by treating them with contempt. It's Tim Shriver. Tim Shriver is the founder of Unite. He's our CEO, and he and another colleague that you'll see in the next video, Tom Roschert, and I are the three principals of Unite who created the Dignity Index. So when we treat people with dignity, we're declaring our values, our goals, we're making proposals. We discuss facts, decisions. How did those decisions impact you? What were the outcomes? And we listen carefully. We're going to talk about some of the things we might be able to say when we are treating someone with dignity in a disagreement. And we debate specifics. It's not like you're a horrible person. It's like, here's what you said or you did, and here's how that impacted me. It's really just some clear communication. And people will say, but what if it's true? What if those people really are ruining the country? It's not contempt because it's true. But the Dignity Index isn't a truth detector. There's a lot of fact checks out there. We detect contempt. We ask people to ask themselves, are you demonizing your opponents in order to energize your supporters? Are you alarming your supporters in order to gain support and get them to hate your opponents? Is there more contempt in your family, in your community, in your country after your speech than there was before the speech? And this is what it always comes down to: is can you tell the truth? Can you hold someone accountable without using contempt? And this is my other colleague.
You can make a powerful case and challenge an opponent and hold someone accountable and do it with dignity. And the way that would be done is you're not doing any name calling. That's out. You're not labeling someone. You're not sneering at them. That's gone. And then you take up the criticism in the language of decisions, actions, the outcome of those actions, who gets hurt, and you invite the other person to respond. And if you really want to take it to a higher level, instead of saying just, this is who you are, you move to, this is what you do, and you move better than that to, this is the thing that you did, to ultimately, maybe, this is what we can do together. So if you're challenging someone with dignity, it's more like you're trying to solve a problem than win an argument. So it's not common. We don't see a lot of examples in our culture, but it's absolutely possible. And as we continue our movement, we'll have many more ready examples to show. But absolutely, without a question, it is possible to hold someone, to challenge someone, and to hold them accountable, and still treat them with dignity.
The challenge of treating the other side with dignity, with such serious stakes and serious issues, is, can you talk about something that they did or a position that they hold without calling them a bad person, without calling them names, without implying that they are morally deficient?
I want to underscore too, it takes practice. This doesn't, I don't think, comes naturally to most of us. There are things that we've looked at in previous scores where I've had to call one of my colleagues and say, how could you say this with dignity? Walk me through, help me practice what that would look like. And the more we apply this scale to our own language in our own relationships, I think that gives us practice opportunities so that we can get used to using that language that it falls on the dignity side of the scale and not on the contempt side of the scale. At a press conference that we had in October of 2022 when we were scoring political speech during the Utah midterms. And there were some things that came out, and I would call Tom. I say, I actually do think they're ruining the country. I don't belong in our organization. Tell me how. He says, well, why do you think that? And he would boil it down. Well, he said, then you look at a vote that was taken. You look at something that was said. Why is that impacting you? Why is that impacting your family? And you use those facts. He said the problem is no one wants to do that. It's easier to say you're ruining the country instead of I disagree with your vote on this for this reason, because that takes some homework. So we're going to give this a try now that you've had a whole 20 minutes. Yeah, the videos are on our YouTube channel, which is at the Call to Unite is our YouTube channel. But we've got a bunch of videos there. So I'm going to put up a quote. Most of them are political, but not all of them. We've pulled them from our demonstration project. And I want you to look at your scale. We've scored these all with our group of coders back in early on. We had a group of coders from the University of Utah. The more current ones are scored by a large group of coders that we have of 80 Americans from across the country. They're on our citizen scoring panel that have been trained on the Dignity Index. We've got far left to far right and everywhere in between. So here's the first quote. And this is from Senator John McCain in 2008. He said, I've always believed that America offers opportunities to all who have the industry and will to seize it. Senator Obama believes that too. First of all, do you think it's on the contempt or the dignity side of the scale? It's definitely on the dignity side of the scale. What would you score? And guesses are fine. Again, you've had 20 minutes to check this out. 6, 5, 6. I could make a case probably for either a 5 or 6. We scored this one a 6. Here's what I believe. They believe it too. So we found something that we had in common, right? We're searching for those values and interests that we share. Good job. This one is more recent. This is something that, and I didn't hear this, but our citizens panel scours the internet. Sean Hannity said, he's still a buffoon and a horrible host. McAfee's biggest problem, I'll tell you what it is. The ego cannot handle living in the shadows of the far more popular, way more talented Stephen A. Smith. Dignity or contempt? Contempt side of scale. Where would you go? 4, 3, 2, or 1? 3, 4, 4-ish, 3, 4-ish. Okay, our panel scored this a 4. We're questioning, we're better than you. We're kind of questioning your intelligence on this one, but we are not calling you that we're the good people and you're the bad people, although I could probably make a case for that a little bit. But we scored this one a 4. This one is from the Democratic National Committee right before the Iowa caucus. It doesn't matter which extreme Republican wins the Iowa caucus today, they all have the same dangerous ideas for our country. 2, 3, 3, 2. We scored this a 3. You could make a case for a 2, though. And I guess what you're hearing from me is you sit down and you discuss these things. And if I'm saying, well, if the same dangerous ideas for our country as they're ruining our country and I need to stop them, that would lead me to score it lower as a 2. But taken on the surface, we scored this one a 3. Part of the beauty of scoring things with the Dignity Index is you do it with people or with groups and you hear why they think that. You hear someone from the opposite side of the ideological aisle explain something to you and give their input, which is just some really rich discussions that we've had. Yes, please.
So this one's interesting because it's actually, we go back to the book. So I think there's an interesting distinction sometimes here on a question about how do you attack an idea. That's a dangerous idea.
Yeah.
without attacking the person. And I wonder if you could have a quote that's pretty similar to this.
Mhm.
That says, these are not bad people, but we think their ideas are extreme.
That's exactly, and it does move it up the scale, and I've got another quote, and I'll show you how we do that. It's like, it doesn't matter. In fact, the way you worded it is that the extreme ideas being voiced by members, the candidates in the Iowa caucus today are dangerous. I disagree with them, and I feel like they are not going to get us to where we need to be. I mean, there are a variety of ways you could change that. Yours was off the top of your head better. This is what you do, right? But yes, you extreme Republican. That's one. When you label someone, you're an extreme Republican, you're a MAGA Republican, you're a woke liberal. Anytime you attach that label to someone in front of whatever they actually are, that automatically puts you on the contempt side of this scale. Take out extreme, and you say the Republicans. Whichever Republican wins, they have ideas that I think are dangerous for our country. That's a 5, or actually not even scoreable, because there's not, you're stating your opinion. It would probably get a 5, but super good point. I'm going to show you how we played that out in another one. This one is from Leon Mugesera, who is serving a life sentence for his role in the Rwandan genocide. So this is a gimme. They're scum. They're not even human, right? That is at the bottom of the scale. That's genocide. That language. Whoever's neck you do not cut is the one who will cut yours. Our language. It's our moral duty to destroy them before they destroy us. Here's the one I was thinking of, Gordon. The Biden administration is obsessed with creating mountains of federal red tape. These regulations raise costs for every American. They hamper our ability to compete. They siphon time, et cetera, et cetera. You scored this one a 4. You take out one phrase. The Biden administration is obsessed with creating mountains of red tape. If you said the Biden administration's red tape is costing every American blah, blah, blah. You can have the exact same thing, but when I characterize you as being obsessed with creating mountains of red tape, I'm attacking your character. And you would be much more effective. I look at this. What if there are, and I'm not saying what if there are a lot of people that on both sides of the aisle that agree with this? Probably a lot of Democrats that say, yeah, this is freeing my business. So are Democrats who read this more or less likely now to agree with you? You've just attacked your president. When you take that language out, now you've got Democrats and Republicans and everyone in between going, I actually agree with that. These regulations are not. That's where you, again, start to problem solve.
So
Yes.
it strikes me too that it's not that you're attacking. I mean, be upset about the policies of their side, but it's you're attacking their motives. It's like you're bad faith. They're trying to
Exactly. Yeah, question their
They're
motives.
just saying this is what I think is.
Yes.
There's some subjectivity.
In fact, we have a scoring guide that's on our website that is a little more detailed. It's still one page, but it gives detailed reasons why you would score something. And in that scoring guide, Gordon, it talks about attacking someone's motives. And think about it. When someone attacks your motives, one of the 10 elements of dignity is giving someone the benefit of the doubt. You know, when I was in politics, I know people are going to think I did this for this reason. But I was always so grateful when someone gave me the grace to say, you know what, I think Tami's trying to do what's right. I'm not going to attack the motives. I don't agree with that. I'm going to talk to them about it. But that's exactly right. This is the more recent one. I think I've got 2 up. It's his right to say whatever he wants. I'm not about kids. What would you score it out? This is Rebel Wilson.
5.
Phillips. So 5. Whatever, you know. Let them have their opinion. I'm not going to cancel them. This one was from Don Staley, who was the coach of the winning team, referring to Cleveland Clark. It's like, hey, thank you. Thanks for lifting up our sport. When you're the number, you know, you're not going to stop. You carried a heavy load, and it's not going to stop here. You're going to lift up the entire league. We scored this one a 6. They were opponents, but her success and that other team's success, they were mutual wins. And then here's the last one. I sat with condemned men on death row. I've spoken with former police officers who have admitted inflicting the cruelest torture. But I've recognized in each of them a depth of humanity that was a mirror of my life. That's an A. That's actually Desmond Tutu from his book on Forgiving. That's an A. My colleague Tom likes to talk about people say I could never be an eight. You know, how do you love your enemies and do good to people who despitefully use you? And he'll say, does anyone have kids? Well, you're a toddler. Or young toddler, you've been at an 8, I promise. So we piloted this just quickly. I want to set up the next 2 quick videos. We piloted the Dignity Index in Utah with the University of Utah. The Hinckley Institute of Politics, the Kim Gardner Policy Institute helped us. And we hired this group of undergraduate and graduate students and trained them to score speech. 2 of these students that you'll hear from in just a moment finished the pilot program, moved on, they were done with their work. We get a call from them a couple of months later. And they said, are you okay if we still loosely associate ourselves with the Dignity Index? And I said, I guess, what's going on? They said, we started the Students for Dignity Club at the U. We want to keep meeting. We want to use the Dignity Index. We want to score speech because when we score speech, it helps us change our own speech. So I'm going to tell you about their experience just briefly. Again, the very first part of this sound is cut off. I tried to extend it a little bit, but I think you'll agree it's quite impactful.
I remember being so excited to start work on the Dignity Index. I felt like division was tearing America apart at its seams. I could see it in my classrooms. I could see it on social media. I saw it, worst of all, in my relationships with my friends and family. And I was so excited because I saw this as a tool where I could point to people and basically hold them accountable for destroying the country. One of the biggest culprits I felt for this was like Fox News political pundits. And I remember I was watching one of my favorite political commentators on YouTube. He started talking about Republican senators. And I remember listening to him and I was like, that's a 4. You're characterizing them as a 4. And then he went into a 3 and a 2. And I remember him saying, they are pigs. Wow, this is nasty contempt. And I am listening to this hours a day, every day. Now, the funny thing is, I felt like Fox News political pundits were destroying the nation because so many people were kind of tuning into this hatred and they were becoming numb to it. I was doing the exact same thing. I recognized his contempt, but it never really dawned on me how harmful it was. And I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I was able to basically identify that othering that I learned through the Dignity Index.
Something we had hoped for, but it surprised us how quickly the student scores picked up on this. And even when I presented to different places, people would say, oh my gosh, I need to go home and apologize to someone. I need to treat my husband better. This beautiful young woman came up after a presentation to a Chamber of Commerce, and she said, I think I talked my husband the wrong way. And I remember looking at her going, you look like so young, sweet thing. What are you talking about? She said, I can do better. I need to do better. And I had another young father with maybe younger to early teen children. He said, I listened to this and I kept not wanting to hear what you were saying because I knew I had to do better. He said, so I'm here confessing I have to do better. But it's this mirror effect that Madeline so beautifully describes. And we had hoped for it, but it really has become one of the most powerful things of the Dignity Index is that people use it as a mirror. Once you know what a 3 is, or a 2 is, or a 6 is, you can't forget this. On the way home, when someone cuts you off in traffic, I promise you, you're going. How would I respond to someone not on the Dignity side of the scale? And it's like, sorry, but not sorry. Hopefully you'll carry this with you forever. We do in our staff meetings when we have discussions. It's on the top of mind all the time. My husband and I talk about it. Another effect was the agency effect, where people, now that I get this, they're going, now there's something I can do. I don't have to keep watching the same, commentator or whatever on social media. And then this electrifying effect. I'm going to have Preston, our our Students for Dignity program tell you about those effects.
We've seen from the Dignity Index,
The electrifying effect, the mirror effect.
and the agency effect. The electrifying effect really is the passion that I want more, that I want to be a part of this, I want to champion this, really the energy that comes from seeing the index and dignity as a solution to what we're facing here. The mirroring effect is when you've spent some time with the index and you're not just using the index to look at somebody else. You're saying, how am I contributing to contempt? You hear something that you said or you receive contempt. Someone's on you, whether it's in an email or a social media post or in your comments, or they're saying it to you directly, and you're feeling the emotion of wanting to respond with contempt. But then in the back of your head, the dignity index is pushing you up the scale. It's saying, oh man, I want to be a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7. How do I respond to this in that way? And that last point is that agency effect is now, okay, now I need to make a decision. I need to start using my agency and making the choice on a daily basis to use dignity. But if we can at least shift the culture over that tipping point where more people are choosing dignity than they are contempt, and I think we'll actually see some of the solutions that we know that this can create, and our democracy will be healthier because people will be able to say what they think, and that's huge for a democracy.
And Madeline are both students, were students at the University of Utah, undergraduate, graduate, and they said they had all these examples where I couldn't say what I felt. I couldn't say what I thought in class because I was going to get canceled. Someone was going to be offended. And so that really drew them to our project. The bottom line on our work here, and then I'm going to wrap up probably in the next 5 minutes, is that when we see contempt, it's hard. Or when we use contempt ourselves, it's hard to see it in ourselves. But once we see it, then it's hard to use it. And that's what we hope. We hope people internalize this. We hope people say, oh my gosh, I just said something that would probably be a 3. I can't do that. I'm going to think of another way to say that in a way that can help solve problems. So what's next for you? What's next for the Dignity Index? What we do in our trainings is we ask people to use this. I mean, just this alone, I don't need you to download any curriculum. We have some that is going to be on our website. But even just in a moment of conflict, we have these ideas on the back of the card. Challenge ideas, don't attack people. Acknowledge knowledge. I was in a training once with an elected body in another state, and this person who was unhappy about everything on the agenda. I could tell this was maybe the way that those agendas typically went. This person made a good point. I thought this was a really valid point. No one said anything because I think this was just the way those agendas went. And I thought to myself, he made a good point. Even though you disagree with him on everything else, you should agree on this point. You should say, that was a good point. Let's talk about that. Build up rather than tear down. So these are some ideas. Another thing that we've been training in our trainings is just use the actual index itself. And if someone has said something or you're in a conflict where you think you're maybe at a 3 or a 4, at a 7, you're going to find out what you disagree on and be open to admitting you made a mistake. Just try that. Why don't you ask more questions? Why don't you ask some of these questions like we have the dignity phrases? Can you tell me more about that? Wow, I think just the opposite. Tell me how you came to that view. Can you tell me what I'm not getting? And I just keep remembering in some of my service on the state school board, we would rehash the same thing for like 3 years. The last thing I want to do is say, can you tell me what I'm not getting? It's like, I don't want to hear it one more time. What I should have said is, how do you think we fix it? That's how you engage. I love this one too. If we talk long enough, we're going to find out that we share some values. So these are things you can practice. That's on our website, that little part too. But you can use the index itself and just say, man, I'm going to search for values we have in common. That will get me up to a 6. I'm going to find out things we don't agree on. This will push me up to a 7. In about 3 weeks, we're launching the Dignity Daily. This is like a Wordle game. Only we're going to let you score speech. We're going to let you score public and political speech and keep track of your scores. This is part of our, let me just go back quickly. It's an app. This will be part of our grassroots movement. So it will be an app. I've been going through the prototype of the app. The app will have the index on it. It will have this information. It will have a little bit more clarity on our scoring guide, not a ton, but you'll be able to play the Dignity Daily and practice scoring speech. Part of our, again, this is part of our grassroots. Part of our grassroots movement is working with public education. This is one of the first groups that came to us after our launch, our pilot was done and said, can I teach this in the classroom? Can I write some lesson plans on this? Can we come and talk to our school board? And we've done that literally all over the country. The Utah School Boards Association adopted this for their as their motto for last year, or their goals for last year. One of the teachers has translated it into language that is more appropriate maybe for middle school or high school kids. I tell my friends they're bad people when we disagree. That's up to them. Locally elected officials is a beautiful video I won't play now, but it's the mayor of Hilldale who said we used to be the Wild West and we're not anymore. And you know what we're using in my office? We're using a dignity index. Unbeknownst to me, this was one of the plenary sessions at the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Someone took this video and sent me to Tami talking about dignity index. We are trying to get out more and more into the community. This is Tim had two events really sponsored by the Wheatley Institute, the National Cathedral event and at ABI just a couple of weeks ago. So that's our grassroots movement. We like you to be a part of it. We also have the grass tops that we're working on too. It requires both. I can't ask people to vote for, support people who only speak with dignity or who try to speak with dignity if there's nobody there for them to vote for. And politicians or leaders will tell me, Governor Herbert tells me this all the time, Tami, people use contempt in their campaigns because it wins. You've got to find a way to make it not win. So that's what we're trying to do to support the grass tops. And Gordon described a little bit about this. We've been involved with Governor Fox on this. We are also out speaking in higher ed offices across the state. We had a call yesterday from Oklahoma. We're going to speak to, all of their student services across the state. We've got 3 university visits and 2,000 superintendents that want to hear our message. This one is BYU. I had to show the BYU picture. We just started getting these requests from corporations, large corporations that have 220,000 employees. Top, I would say Fortune 500, but they're Fortune 50 and Fortune 20 companies saying this has to be our company culture. So we're doing trainings for new hires and interns in those corporations. And then the governors, which is really the ultimate, our goal across the country, is working with Gordon and with Governor Fox on his Disagree Better initiative. This last video I'll show is the fruits of this one in February when we came, and one of the outreach that we did was to Oklahoma, to Governor Stitt. Very, very conservative Republican governor. Tim Schreiber is a Kennedy. So a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, and fairly liberal, but we agree on so much. That's just the beauty of this. He's a Democrat Catholic from the East Coast. I'm a Republican LDS from Utah. We could not really agree on more when it comes to these issues. So this was a commercial that we did as part of Governor Fox's
One of Democrats. And I am now the chairman of Special Olympics. And I'm Kevin Stitt, Republican governor of the great state of Oklahoma. My mom was my greatest inspiration. She built the Special Olympics movement on one simple principle. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Take one of America's biggest challenges, the partisanship that divides families and communities. Our words and actions can help us heal or make the issue a whole lot worse. That's because the disagreements themselves don't divide us. It's the contempt we often bring to the table when we disagree. There isn't any idea that won't be made better by a healthy debate. The way we treat each other does make the difference. Treating people with dignity beats hostility and disrespect every time. And that's how you disagree better.
So to wrap up, I know you're all probably worried about my family. We're all great. We're doing well. We've had some struggles there for a while. A lot of it was because of these labels that the country gives us, that sometimes we gave each other, and we would see things through those labels. But let me show you a little bit deeper past those labels. My husband and I, yes, we're Republican, but we also have been singing together for almost 44 years. We're married. We're proud parents, proud grandparents, and we have really so much enjoyment in our family and our family life. My husband rides a Harley Davidson. He goes by Pappy to the grandkids. And I'm a political junkie and I sung in the Tabernacle Choir for 7 years and still volunteer with the choir. This is Kimberly. She is a mother of 3. She performs in an improv comedy club here in Provo. It's an all-women improv club. She makes award-winning macarons, something she learned taking cooking classes in France. Something that you wouldn't know about her from that label. This is Lane. He is a robotics engineer who reads Ray Bradbury, loves Ray Bradbury almost as much as I do, and sends me flowers on a regular basis. This is Karen. She loves ghost towns and ghost tours and spoils her dogs. She has changed the lives of thousands of students over the last 20 years as an educator. Kyle is a musician. He's an artist. He plays the lead in community musicals up in Cache Valley. He is always looking out for someone that needs a hand up. He has a fierce sense of justice. And I love that about him. And Nate, again, a musician. He loves to take his kids camping. He serves in his local congregation. And he's always really quick to forgive others and help anyone in the family who needs it. That's who we are. We're not those labels that we carry. We're not those people that country hates. I'd often do this in the beginning because I say, if you need a Democrat, you need a French. If you don't like libertarians, that's personally offensive to me. So, leaving this quote for the end: anger never persuades, hostility builds no with intention never leads to inspired solutions. They talked about this talk from President Nelson at the April conference last year as she was giving this conference talk. I just thought, oh my God, you're right. We were just not keeping this. This is what we were going to do. And he was articulating it in a better way than I could ever hope to. But he says we can literally change the world one person and one interaction at a time. So that's our goal with the Dignity Index. We'd love to have you join the movement. Visit our website, sign up, take a pledge, we'll send you newsletters, we'll send you all kinds of resources, and tell you about the Dignity Daily when it comes out. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry we went over just a little bit. Sorry, like I'm sure all the time for Q&A. I'm happy to stay in line and answer any questions. Thank you.